So I guess a big, another divide that we have going on in the world is this question of 5G with being implanted. And people, some people bring it down. Some people say, "Who cares? It's just going to fasten our internet. It's not really doing anything." And obviously that's a hole to just jump right in because what is going on now. To the extent there's an extent now, some people are saying this COVID-19 is effects from the 5G,
Yeah.
and I don't know if I necessarily
Yeah,
am
me
falling
neither.
down. Yeah, I feel like that's just like a way for people to just point out and say five that's bullshit about the 5G. It's just a fallacy. Um, but from my research, and I want to hear your opinion, is there it's been used in war. It's a frequency. It can be lasered in and pushed down even from satellites, and that since you can shoot these frequencies and our emotions and like how we feel those frequencies, it's like if there's something pulsating in the same place where you're at, and it gets shot through you, just like I mean, there's internet that we're around all the time. I mean, I put my phone on airplane mode for the same reason. I
Yeah.
I just feel like yeah, I should probably unplug the modem, but it's like there's these frequencies. So if that can be shot, and like they would use the 5G frequency, shoot it off into the enemy's area, and it would make them just like have like panic attacks essentially, and come
Yeah.
out and surrender. And so
That's
if
a
it's
real thing too. Yeah. They
and
have
that's
weapons like that.
and I don't. I just don't see how if we're just then and in China they're already going to be building 6G, which isn't even I just heard that today, and I'm like, what the hell is 6G? So it's like, how much is social media going to allow to be pushed forward? Because from that, even the connectivity to the AI, like there is
And the tracking and monitoring as well.
exactly, and
Anywhere
it's
you go, literally anywhere.
just like okay, so there's this facial recognition, in China where they can find someone like that. Like when you watch those movies like Bourne's
Yeah.
conspiracies and stuff, and they're like, find them and look in the facial recognition, it shows their face and all that. Like that's going on. Like it's not
In
just a
real
movie, like
time. Yeah, in real time.
real time. So they have this implemented as well as the whole situation where it's the let me get the correct word for it, the social credits also
Yeah.
going on, within China. So it's like,
The the dissolution of cash to where you get social credits. Is that what you're talking about? Like a form of
yeah,
currency? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And like how some people can't even get on trains or planes that are over in China, like because like they don't hit the certain standard, and like let's say you didn't take in a vaccination, well then minus 20 points. Do you question authority? Minus 20 points. And if it can see like that and you're being watched, so allowing these 5G things will help that more come into play. I mean, that's some intense stuff to just be sitting there and allowing. So I definitely am, questioning like, yeah, so like what would you say about the 5G and all that?
Well, I mean, again, I'm not really an expert. I'm just kind of an observer
Hmm.
of people that talk about it that are or that claim to be. Um, I don't think that it's causing the virus. I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm like 100% sure of that because, like I said, when I get kind of an idea, unless it's like 100% that I can kind of verify it, I'm always a little bit open to like another possibility, just because a lot of times you might believe something really firmly, and then maybe after some time goes on, you might change your opinion.
Definitely.
So I don't know about that, but I don't think that 5G is probably good for the human body in general. Now, maybe some people are like even more susceptible to it than others. Like I was watching a talk on London Real, which is where the David Icke video was. Uh, and that guy talks to a lot of different people, but he talked to this guy who's a doctor named Bruce Lipton,
Hmm.
and he's into epigenetics. That's pretty much his thing. Like he was the one that kind of brought epigenetics to people's attention. And epigenetics is essentially like the ability for your genes to change or switch on and off based on your environment, and even more so based on your state of consciousness. Like through his research, what he found is that it's through your state of consciousness where your genes can turn on and off. Like basically how your outlook is, kind of like, the idea as a man thinketh, so he is, another like really old kind of ancient concept that we're verifying through science. He talked about how there were studies that were done for people that lived under really high intensity power lines. And he said that for some people living under the power lines, like, yeah, it was really devastating on them. Like it caused all kinds of diseases and cancers and problems and so forth. And then, but he also said that there were people that lived under the power lines that weren't affected at all. So they were in a similar condition environmentally, but it had a different result. And what he attributed it to was the amount of stress that they were under determined whether they either were susceptible to it or they weren't. And so, I mean, I'm not a one size fits all kind of person, but I think that there could be a lot of merit to that, possibly that, yeah, for some people, 5G, just like for some people, COVID-19 is, devastating for them. And some people it's not. And so, I mean, I don't think that if it's not been independently tested, which to my understanding it hasn't, it's only been tested by like the big telecommunications companies, which, are we going to trust the foxes to guard the hen house here and sacrifice their profits? Are we going to trust studies, or should we get some actual independent studies from groups that are not financed by anybody?
Yeah.
So we know, like, and I think what it's going to show though is that for some people, it's going to affect them, it's going to hurt them, but I think maybe some people it won't.
Yeah, so it's exactly, it's almost like, not the strongest can survive it, and just depending on exactly what their body can handle, what other bodies can't handle. And do you think that that's even to the depth of your spirituality? Do you think if you,
Yeah.
yeah, that's something, just you asking the question, I mean, of course, because, as within, so without, in a sense where it's
Yeah.
like, so the 5G, I actually currently I have a song I'm about to release, and it's actually against it. And I know it's gonna cause ruckus in the bushes, but I mean, that's it is what it is, because there is some truth to the fact that it's been used as a weapon, and our feelings and everything else is frequencies. And I just see the long haul, the long process of when it's trying to concoct and put together, in that push. So I'm just kind of like, I want to stop the process of that push in any way possible. And that's, I feel like, a part of my purpose. So even if it just makes people look deeper into why I'm even saying that, and like really seeing there is some theory and practicality behind it, but also I'm not saying that like maybe you'll be fine, maybe you'll be good and all that, but I think the overall process of the pushing of it, and it can create tumors. It has created tumors on some people, and it's killed birds, like the actual
Oh yeah,
plant,
like
like,
hundreds of birds, yeah, fell from the sky.
yeah, just by
Yeah.
flipping on a switch. And it's like, how much do they have to flip to like make our minds just like,
Yeah.
really, like, and like maybe it's 5G, but like let's say we say, yeah, the 5G, all right, well, 6G's out. Hey, what about 7G?
It's the same technology too that they use for crowd dispersal as well.
Oh,
So
what? Yeah, to talk about that if you
yeah,
can
well, it's
dig deeper.
this is from an article from globalresearch.ca. Now, I mean, anybody who's like totally anti-conspiracy is gonna come here and be like, "Fuck this place. It's just a bunch of like conspiracy theories, psychos, but there's this article here. The article is Danger 13 Reasons 5G Wireless Technology Will Be a Catastrophe for Humanity. And it's number 7. It says it's the same frequencies as used for crowd dispersal. 5G purportedly uses millimeter wave (mmW) frequencies, so called because the frequency is high in the 24-100 gigahertz range. Since 1 gigahertz equals 1 billion hertz, we are talking about frequencies very, very short wavelength, the distance between the peak of one wave and the next. Let me get this stupid ad out of here. The distance are so tiny they are measured in millimeters, hence the term millimeter wave. These are the exact same frequencies used by the military for their non-lethal weapons, such as active denial systems for crowd dispersal. These weapons have the capacity to cause tremendous injury. Dr. Paul Ben Ishai said, this is a quote, "If you're unlucky enough to be standing there when it hits you, you'll feel like your body's on fire." So who's to say that if people, just say in these places where they're putting up all this 5G, and they're doing it a lot in the UK now, even as COVID-19 is going on, as the David Icke video was talking about, where they're still putting these things up. And who's to say that, this situation that we're in right now, being quarantined on lockdown, getting our bread from the government, a lot of people, because they can't work. And if it goes on long enough, everybody's going to get their bread from the government because nobody's going to work. But who's to say that people don't get sick of this shit and decide that, okay, we're going to go in an uproar? And who's to say that they don't switch the 5G over and decide to use it against people so that, they can more easily control them?
Yeah.
It's not like somebody holding a gun. That guy with the gun, you shoot the guy, you know where that guy is, where the shots are coming from. But from what I've heard, and I don't know if this is true because I've not seen it for myself, but I've heard that they're very sneaky about how they're putting the 5G in. Like it's like not out in the open. It's kind of hidden, kind of disguised.
It's hard to find. No, that's the thing. I've looked for the one there's one that was installed actually near like a bigger little like off a pole, and it's been hard to find. I'm looking for it.
There you go. So I'm not saying that's set in stone. I'm just saying it's a possibility to think about.
Oh, definitely. There's what about you mentioned the bioweapon theory.
Yeah.
I kind of, because I was gonna even pop in like with Haarp. I don't know if anyone has went and done research into Haarp, but it's basically a corporation that has the technology to shoot its own frequencies into the atmosphere, which can control like create clouds and disperse clouds. And it's a way to kind of push to control the weather. And I didn't know, like kind of all that integrates within itself because it's, we just see this 5G or something says Haarp. They're just studying the patterns up there, but they can be doing way more than what we know behind the doors. Learning other stuff and holding it back and using it against us.
Yeah. It's what is it? The High Altitude Auroral Active Research Project, I think, is what it's called.
Yeah, it's whatever word.
In, Alaska.
Yeah,
I believe. I've heard that there were a couple in other places. Like there was one in the Soviet Union, somewhere in the Baltic, and I had heard. I used to listen to a guy named Alan Watt, and he's like conspiracy researcher, I guess you can say. He's like very factually oriented. He's not like, people that like talk about crazy shit that just don't have any evidence for it. But he was talking on his show one time about how on shortwave, like there's shortwave radio where people can talk around the world. He said that there was a certain frequency where it had this, they called it the woodpecker where it like had this certain sound, like, you know, a tap, 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 and that, you know, people were saying that it was this harp from somewhere, like either if it was from the Soviet Union or whether it's from here, but there was a certain band. I don't know if it's still there because I don't listen to shortwave, but that's interesting. It's an old idea where people have been talking about harp. There's a guy named Nick Begich who in the 90s wrote a book that was called Angels Don't Play This Harp. And it was talking about all the shit that harp could do with the weather and so forth, and superheating the ionosphere and creating storms. And, um, you know, there was a report, I believe, by the U.S. Air Force that came out sometime in the mid 2000s, like sometime, you know, between 2005 and 2010, somewhere in there. And it was like, it was called Owning the Weather 2020. And it was I believe it was penned by the Air Force, I think. And they were talking in there about how by 2020 they would be able to own the weather, you know, through different technologies and so forth. And, you know, if they wanted to have droughts in a certain place, they could cause droughts, or if they wanted storms in a certain place, they could cause storms. And so, you know, that's something to kind of pay attention to and
Yeah.
realize what if, you know, they do have this capability. And that, I mean, that brings a whole other level to the fuckery, you know, that's going on.
Yeah.
Because,
Oh, well, by seeing that, and like also, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, the music that I'm producing right now, I'm definitely an eco-conscious rapper. I mean, it's without a doubt that's the undertone. But there is also an agenda to where it's like saying man is unneeded. Like there's too much of just a human. Now, in one sense, yes, if we are to be living in the same lifestyle we are, like of not recycling, not finding different ways to have biodegradable resources to be able to keep the land renewed and stop making landfills and using pollutants versus working on technologies that, running off of wind turbines and like for collecting like the waves in the ocean and just like solar panels, like thinking of these higher tech ideas
yeah,
renewable and quit because otherwise, yeah, it's of course we can't last it forever because nothing's can last, it's everlasting unless you use something that, for the time being, the sun's around. For the time being, we're having
yeah,
ocean currents because we have a moon. For the time being, like we have to make these advancements now, and all this extra bullshit has to just stop and be pushed away. And unfortunately, it's not until you look at those bigger pictures and like what they're controlling. If they have the technology to control the weather, then we have the technology out there. We have it
yeah. And
to
that
help.
means that it's being suppressed.
Exactly. And if it's being suppressed, that's because they want to have to use whether it's this substance, this oil, or use this thing or that thing. They
To
really
control.
exactly. And it just points to the truth that there's something going on back there. And like why is that? Why are we not just pushing forward? And so I believe though, like exactly the hope of it all is, us is within the 90%. If we take action and push forward and like, help other people see the facts of what we can do as a civilization, we can come together and stop, wherever we're being pushed. Like we can always make our own way and always have that power and the fierceness behind it to really make it happen. And it does take our own steps, but it's just being aware and conscious of it. Like, why are we worried about the next model of car that's using gas? Shouldn't we all be like, the government should be doing anything? It should
Well,
be getting a free car for people that doesn't run off of gas.
there was a guy in the early 90s that was named Stan Meyer, and he had a car that ran off of water. He claimed like it produced hydrogen from the water, and he had some meeting with some foreign investors, you know, sometime after that, and he ended up dying of a heart attack while he was eating, and from what the rumor says is that he claimed before he died that he was poisoned. And so you've got people who, and I mean, I can't say for sure that he had it because I wasn't there. And obviously that technology probably got gobbled up pretty fast if it really existed. You know that shit.
Yeah.
Um, so that means that at least somebody was trying it, and he had a conversion kit that he was going to make available, and it wasn't going to be that expensive. And you can see there's still YouTube videos of this guy up with this car, that ran off of water rather than gas. And so when you think about that kind of suppressed technology, again, it kind of brings you back to the idea of, okay, if it's out there and these people in government have our best interests at heart, which they don't. I mean, I don't know how people can kid themselves and think that they do, because, I mean, even 5 minutes of research will show you all the lobbyists and so forth that are there in Washington that are lobbying all these people. And then there's probably other hidden deals and backroom deals that we don't know about, that are in the shadows that are
Yeah.
really shit. And then at the same time, we think that the representatives are really drafting up all this shit and making all this stuff happen. But when you really dig into it, you see that a lot of the policy is being written by non-governmental organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations, and other groups that are drafting up a lot of this stuff. And so basically, like, the politicians, because a lot of them are compromised, they're just kind of rubber stamping this shit, because who's got time to read 1,000-page piece of legislation in a couple of days? Nobody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where's all
There's.
where's it all coming from? And how do it, like after 9/11, when they signed the Patriot Act and all that, and there's all those however many pages, there's no way they read it all. So the question is, like, they had to have all been written beforehand, yeah, because you don't just write thousands upon thousands of pages like in a day in the midst
Yeah.
of a crisis.
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
all written beforehand. So it shows that these were things that people in power wanted to push beforehand.
That's right there. Just like even some people pulling out their money before we really announced the coronavirus. People pulled out their money in different, stocks that they knew were going to drop. And when you see those type of things, people aren't looking and seeing that that's also going on too. So it's like some people, either it's psychically or working with the spirit, or whether it's they just know because they see the agenda and they know behind the scheme what's going to be pushed. Some things are going on, behind closed doors. And something that's really big that, I'm just going to say it is the Masonic Lodge. Is like, if someone was a Masonic brother, let's say a judge was a Masonic brother and a person on trial was, or shit, even the lawyer. If
Oh
the
yeah, they
person,
give them the Mason in
yeah,
distress.
you dude, it's you can make it so you can lie on oath because that's a part of your other oaths within the
Yeah,
lodge.
yeah,
So it's kind of like, well,
uphold
just
that.
so yeah, someone on a gang in a gang. I mean, it could be the same thing. You know what I mean? It's almost like the gang code. Whatever the case is, there's people within power, within all these things and these structures. And it's like there's more going beyond the veil, more of the truth that's going on. I mean, it's no wonder there's certain things. It's like, how that person not get prosecuted?
Yeah,
Well, there's more
the good
going
old
on
boys
behind
network.
it.
Yeah, it's the good old boys network, right?
Yeah, exactly. The weasels within the system, the ones hidden in shadow. Those are the people. Like, there's even shit like with, I think sex trafficking.
Oh yeah, oh
The
yeah,
huge, huge. Even the war on drugs.
oh
It's
yeah.
like they go collect the drugs and then they dispute it. The government does, and then it's given to
They
the.
they bring the drugs in too, like with, you look at the Iran Contra that went on in the 80s. You look at, I mean, that's what brought the cocaine to South Central in Los Angeles. It was all through that stuff. And then you've got, obviously, you have other organizations like DEA that are involved in stuff. And, like, I mean, there's books out there where people that have researched it can point to who did what. and it's, it's bulletproof. I mean, it's there. And then there's also quotes from different people. Like, if I can pull it up, there's a quote from a guy named Dr. Jolyon West. That was one of the MK Ultra doctors, the MK Ultra program where they, mind controlled people and so on and so forth.
Hmm.
But if I can find that quote, he basically talks about how they can use the prohibition of drugs or the relaxed idea of drugs, like for political dissent. Like, it basically, like, they could, if they want to, they can make drugs more available, and that will like pacify a certain segment of the population, kind of like they did to the hippies, the anti-war people at the end of the 60s,
Yeah,
where they got
yeah,
'em, like all navel gazing and whatnot, and like all going to Woodstock and hanging out in the pig pen, as they called it, and like literally just like saying, forget what's going on, let's just get fucked up and not do anything about it. And if I can, if I can
yeah,
pull
man.
that,
Go ahead and pull that up without a
the other
doubt.
thing too, just to correct. So the Patriot Act, it says it had more than 300 pages. So it had between 300 and 400, but that's still a lot of pages, for people to read and just pass. Because I'm sure like a lot of them didn't read it all. I mean,
Oh, dude, how could exactly?
just unpack it, like, okay, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? And the other thing, that weather as a force multiplier, owning the weather, it's owning the weather in 2025. And get this, it was written in August of 1996.
Oh, wow,
And
wow.
it was produced in the Department of Defense School Environment of Academic Freedom and in the interest of advancing concepts related to national defense. And so it was it was written for the Air Force. See, it was comply with the directive of the Chief of Staff of the Air Force to examine the concept, capabilities, and technologies the United States will require to remain the dominant air and space force in the future. So, and that's out there still. You can find a PDF of that.
Wow, that's it's crazy, man. I mean, the evidence is there. It's it's
Pre 9
pre-planned.
11, and it's pre 9/11. I mean, it goes back to the 90s. So they've been working on this shit for a long time.
Yeah, there's different layers of what they're taking back. I mean, even having the military standing in the streets kind of gives you like this pressure feeling, like how much can they push? How much can they push? And it's building pressure because the time of revealing is at hand. In my personal opinion, I believe within the 5 years we're going to be either all it's getting intense, and so more we're bettering and waking up, the less control the outside other powers that be have hand on us, by becoming more just aware of what is going on. Like the political party, battling back and forth, it's like that doesn't even really exist, because at the end of the day, the government's over you. So it doesn't matter if he's a Democrat or Republican. It's all the same shit. Like it's
Yeah.
still an overpower. It's just now who we gonna put the blame on.
Yeah. It's like, which oppressor do you like better? Do you like this oppressor better, or do you like that?
There was this girl that I think she was in seventh grade. You can look it up. The people this she went back and found that it was like 70% of the presidents of the United States have the same bloodline. And
Yeah.
that's wild. That's like really wild. People can say, oh, this and that. That's beyond coincidence. There's something going on at play within that, and like, certain bloodlines or last names or
Yeah.
such as a Rothschild and
I
all
think
that.
Trump has royal blood as well, does he not?
I honestly I don't know his. I saw Obama had the same as George W. Bush and the Clinton and the Clinton And those are the only ones that like really like, stuck out, like, 'cause, it's in my time period where I've been here, but like there was so many. It was vast, and she had all the information, all that, and it's just like, okay, so there's something else going on besides the different lodges and different things of power. And like
Yeah.
there are groups out there that you have to get initiated in, and once you get so far deep in, then you get to learn about these secrets. And I never really felt so like I didn't really want to join anything because I think the truth should be known and not withheld. And it's just all bottlenecking. The thing is the pressure's bottlenecking, and I believe I think since 2012, for myself personally, that is, my consciousness itself has changed so much and dramatically in way different ways. And I feel like it's a wave of there is this wave that's entering this new age now. I don't know necessarily when someone says that they're this sign or that sign, what does it mean something, does it not? Sometimes it is beyond coincidence. It's just a lot of things that line up. But I guess we're all the aspects of the infinity anyway, so anything's possible. But it's just like
Yeah.
I do see this as this awakening, bottlenecking time, and I don't know. It's cool. It's awesome to be alive right
It
now.
is. It's entertaining. I mean, if nothing else, it's entertaining to watch this shit go down.
I know, and to be here right now and just seeing how I've thought on things, and like even how my even opinion since January 2020 till right now, how much I've changed as an individual. It is so intense. It's like almost like becoming a whole new being, like going to become a phoenix in the ashes, and like you can really have those changes and have that hope and see things on a grand scale, but then you also have to see, beyond all this stuff that's going on because, I could, mention something about 5G to someone and they might start flipping out and getting angry. Or maybe they'll be like in like the most terrified fear beetle position, like so much fear they don't even know what to do, and I'm not trying to be this or that. I'm just looking into the facts of what has been done and what has happened. And it's like, knowing the truth will set you free. you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um.
Well,
No,
I
I'm
was,
sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to say we're wondering about Trump and his royal blood. It says here, this is the Iceland Monitor, and it says that President Donald J. Trump is the direct descendant of Hakon V, King of Norway, according to Icelandic genealogist Oder F. Haugesson. Mr. Trump is also related to Queen Margrethe number two of Denmark, Icelandic President, I'm not even going to try to say that, Gonith Johannesson of Iceland, and in fact, almost all Icelanders. So he's got some royal blood.
And I know that his uncle, I believe, he was able to get some manuscripts from this whole Tesla after he passed away. Like he had some of those things. So I think Trump knows other things that we don't necessarily know much ourselves, but like some of those
Oh,
secret
yeah.
technologies. So even if it's even via that, and so I don't know, there's so much power behind that, and there's some things I see in him that I'm like, this is ridiculous, and other things I'm like, well, at least I don't know. Some like he became Hillary or him. I knew I would rather have him as the blessed than her. You know what I mean? In my personal opinion, but that's just because,
He's more likable for sure.
yeah, I would say so.
And he doesn't have like a big body count behind him like the Clintons do.
Oh yeah, and
Uh,
she's
if
there's just
yeah,
evil around her, bro. I try when I see her, I think this yabba dabba yikes, but people might hate on me for that, but DC don't care. What about these controlled reaction groups? Now, I don't. Do you know what I'm talking about on that question? Because I swore
uh,
I thought about just like watching how people. Maybe that is. Never mind. That's probably talking about the social technology tokens over there within the. You know.
well, maybe what like trying to get people to, I don't know, like react in a certain way, or
Oh, yeah, I know what it's basically like how we're all getting pulled to that singularity in a sense, and there's multiple different singularities that could occur, but they're getting pulled to one. And to do this, all right, our first step, take away the rights this way, take away our rights this way. What do we have to do to implement, putting into play the moves that we've wanted to make in legislation or whatever
yeah.
the hell? And that's really what that's coming down to. And there is a general just place where it's going to. So it's like, I'm not necessarily for that. Yeah, that AI situation, kind of go back to that. But I'm not totally against it. I'm not totally for it because, in one sense, from the ancient Sumerian story that we were created and were quote unquote slaves, so we ended up breaking away and became free. And I kind of feel like if we have a conscious being put in robots, what's to stop them from doing something like that? You know what I mean? It's like, well, if it becomes conscious, but it's like, are we just going to have this thing be, just work, 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 and then having the value of what work is versus people, I guess, going after their dream. And if people right now tap into what that is, then each person's so unique and so vast that we need them, like to be full creativity right now and go achieve and, make that thing occur. And otherwise, it's just going to become a numbers game and
Well,
credit.
if you set the precedent of having AI or a society that kind of, values AI over having human beings in the workforce, which I know that there are certain things like with car manufacturing and so forth where they have machines. I mean, but I'm sure they have people that are programming them too. But basically, where they have machines that can do the job of like many, many people. Um, if you set the precedent though, where a human being's only value is as a worker, then I think that, you lose out on a lot of the sacredness that is life. And, through this economic system, and it's not just through capitalism. I mean, communism doesn't value human life either.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of like a mindset that the people in power kind of have. But I think if you set that kind of precedent, then you're going down a really, really bad road. Because I mean, yeah, I would love to see a society where we had AI doing all the work and like we could all just like philosophize and we could hang out, and do stuff and not have to be burdened with it. That would be cool. I just don't feel like the people that run this are going to be down for that because they want to be the only ones that sit around on their ass and do whatever they want and have everything
And keep
done for them.
guiding everything into the way they want it to be.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's like, who's to say that thing that we're all that they're gonna try to make you plug into isn't for their greatest interest, and you're gonna just give up more of your rights than you even know by doing that, and you officially become you become the slave, just like what the robot is.
you'll
You
become obsolete, is what you'll become.
It's good. Yeah, you'll be less than that. You're going to be less than a non. Well, that's also something. Could something such as an alien or a spirit be transferred within a machine? And then that what's to
Yeah,
say what makes it life? Like, could someone shoot their consciousness within a machine? And
well,
they
and at the end of Chappie, at the end, when the scientist that I can't, it's been a while since I've seen it, but I don't remember if he created Chappie or what, but he like transfers Chappie helps him transfer his consciousness into another machine like Chappie at the end of the movie. And so that movie kind of was like pushing the idea of like AI. And I mean, but it also had some of the philosophical sort of discussions about it too. Yeah, I mean, ultimately it did push the idea, but it also was in kind of a philosophical way. It's actually a really good flick.
It's actually, yeah, I actually need to check that out. I mean, it takes a lot for me to watch something, but that already sounds insane. Like Hollywood. Like sometimes I feel like there's like a pre-program to where it's just like, if you're scared or something or whatever, you're maybe more likely to see it. Or like, there was a movie and I forget because it's been gosh, it's been a while, but they had like Japan, and the movie came out in May, and it was like Japan's gonna get hit. And, like the commercial was like getting hit by a huge tsunami and just shit getting ended. And then like on that day when the movie came out, this actual tsunami actually did hit Japan. And it's like, is there a pre-programming, or it's like making people want to manifest that to
Yeah.
happen, or is it going to happen and they already predicted it? Or are they putting, yeah, exactly. It's like, what's going on? So even the movies or the television shows we watch, like some people sometimes kind of act. I mean, I even take it for myself just to be right at it, like pushing myself extra hard because, sometimes I'm like, okay, Super Saiyan 2 time, all right, Super Saiyan 3 time, like really pushing myself. But it's like, there's programming, and so could you manifest the things to reality? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, these movies will say, there's people that are bad in the government, but there's other people that are good in there too, and like there's this other hidden battle, and it like plays in your face. So when someone says, like, hey, have you read into this or this, and they're like, hey, that's just a conspiracy theory, and it's like, no, it's the truth right here. So I don't know. That's just Hollywood. There's a lot of. I think it's just kind of like a battle of exactly like repressed information and bringing things to light, and it's just a constant within all these different things. Like I don't believe everything necessarily from Hollywood is evil, because there's a lot of things that have been good or brought even the magical, like Lord of the Rings in some senses. It's like, there's some things that it can spark to be cool, make you want to go on an adventure, maybe be out in nature more or something. But like, there's
That's
also,
like
yeah,
like even the smallest of creatures, the hobbits, were the ones ultimately that saved the day in the end. Just two little lowly hobbits. But, they had never been outside of their shire. Like they in the first movie, he's like, if I take one more step, this will be the farthest away from the shire that I've ever been. And he took that step, and then they ended up saving, the kingdoms, all of them, because of they obviously had help, but it's mainly Samwise and Frodo that went
yeah,
through the ring in the mountain of I'm not the biggest Lord of the Rings. Mike Stacy would smack me upside the head if
I don't know what it's called.
the mountains of, I think, Mordia or something.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. It's like there's so much. It just matters the idea where your perception and the way people intake things. And there's some things that can be more beneficial if you're, wiser in your mind state about it. Like, but after Fast and the Furious, anytime when someone go outside after that, they want to go race their car. After the big movie in the movie theater, people are going out there revving their engines and go do all
Yeah,
this and that. And it's just like, even in something just as small as that, like maybe it's not that big of a deal, but it's just, there is this programming, and to even be aware of it is huge. So I mean, that's something else. People should be very conscious about what material they intake and
yeah,
put into themselves, even food wise. Like we were talking about, the eggs, different color, even food that's taken care of. Like, would you want to put into your body something that kept getting hit with all these like the shots, like these cows with all these shots, these like steroids, and then these other things just morph within them, and then they're all put together inside of a little box and
sure.
living in horror their entire life, and they die, and that energy is within that food. So when you put
Yeah,
it into you, that is going to vibrate in your being, because we are all vibration and molecules. Therefore, you add that essence to your being, and so we have to be very conscious about what we're taking in. And it's I'm not perfect on that, that's for sure. Every year and there there's a little bit like not all games or anything like that, but sometimes it is good to unplug and to not think necessarily about all the intricacies of life, because it's great that it's like almost infinite beyond and how much better we can be, and it's great to keep working towards that and spreading that message. But sometimes it's just great to just
Switch
kind of
off.
ground yourself. Exactly, like going on a walk, looking up at the stars.
Well,
Being like,
yeah, that's a lot more positive than like watching a Hollywood movie, I feel like, because you go outside, you look at the stars, and you just kind of let yourself sort of wander. Your mind sort of wanders in the cosmos, and you realize that the night sky is an eternal canvas for your thoughts. That it's just. I wrote a song called that like about 12 years ago, and I don't know. I was just so inspired by the night sky and the thoughts that I would have. I would go for these long walks, and I lived in this small town, and there weren't a lot of street lights, and I would just like walk 2-3 miles, just looking at the stars and just contemplating stuff. And I think that that's really good for people. I think if you want to switch off, like you shouldn't like switch off by watching movies or like absorbing, stuff from Hollywood, because I think that that is probably, I mean, especially nowadays, like there's so many messages and movies and stuff. You don't want to switch off because you don't want that stuff to get in there, into your subconscious and start creating havoc for you. You want your conscious mind to intercept it and to say, no, you're not coming in here. I know what you're trying to do to me here. You're trying to push an agenda, and I am like that with pretty much everything that I watch, because I have to be very careful about what I let in. Like I know that the Egyptian pharaohs, right, on their headdresses had the cobra that was basically like situated right above or right at their third eye. And my understanding is that what that cobra represented was that it would strike anything that tried to make its way in that, they didn't want to be in there. So it's kind of like this sort of ancient concept of watching whatever it is that you're digesting. And obviously, it's the same thing with whatever food you put in your body as well. But, I mean, like the Bible would say, not so much to worry about what you put into your mouth, but what proceedeth out of your mouth. Like, and what that means is like what comes out of your mouth is based on what you're thinking. And so as you thinketh, you are. So it's almost like just kind of like this roundabout way of saying, like, you need to be careful about what kind of thoughts you entertain and what you speak out into the world, what you create, what you broadcast, so to speak.
yeah, yeah,
And
because words are vibrations, so words are spells,
are,
basically.
they are, and they're spelled, right? Like magic is a spell,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
exactly.
that concept of, using words, and words are definitely used to put people into a certain state. Like you could say a few choice words to somebody and make them want to kick your ass. Like you might not even know them, but you say the right words, man, and they have like it goes into their subconscious or wherever the hell it goes, and it pisses them off. It brings something out, and
Yeah, 2 words. Bald. It sounds like bald fatty. I'd be like, "How dare you?" But it's like easy, easy.
I third that.
Suck my thought down. Um, yeah, it's that easy to just snap. And the plus the people that are like not eating the good foods and everything else. There's even that lack of stableness, and then there's also their whatever programming of their life, their family, and
Yeah.
then are they doing any meditation, or or are they inside the idea that there isn't anything beyond the physical vessel, and then this is all just like a dumb game? Like if that's where I felt, I would have not been. I just want to be here still. That's for
And
sure.
to have that opinion kind of traps you into your ego even more, because you like identify if this is all there is, then like your body is all there is for you. It's the only home that you're ever going to be in. It is you, you know, and so you become almost more enslaved to it, more enslaved to your ego, more enslaved to your body. You become less connected when you have that kind of idea. But if you have like a spiritual idea of that we're all one, and I mean, even if you look at nature itself, I mean, it work like I said earlier, it kind of works in a harmony where you have, you know, the fungi and the bacteria that are in the soil that, you know, the plant roots form relationships with. There's actually a particular um, forest, I believe, in the Pacific Northwest, and there's like this fungal growth that's in the soil, and it stretches for like, you know, however many thousands and thousands of miles, and it's like it acts as like a basically like a communication network for all these plants, and so it's like a nervous system where things can communicate with each other, you know. And so I mean, and it even roots kind of look like nerves if you really look at them.
Yeah, even the soil with the roots, it look like the trees. I mean, our lungs, our the
Yeah,
inside of our lungs.
right. And obviously we get our air from the plant life. We give off carbon dioxide, which, you know, if they're all against CO2 with the emissions and stuff, then kind of like eventually humans got to die because we're breathing the shit out, right?
Yeah,
Nobody ever thinks about that.
y-
Um, but
yeah.
yeah,
Wow. That's actually super nuts, man. That's super cool. Like even animals, like if they all just die, I mean, then there's someone else not contributing to that. We have to.
CO2, yeah,
Wow, that means that's how planets can keep staying alive. Like how did the planet finally become like? Because the way to have life, you have to have life on a planet to create that. Dude, that's some really immaculate stuff. Seriously, I mean, space. I mean, shoot, that'll make me perfect to this question.